Just sit back, relax, and leave the driving to Mike Adams. This is... Why would I... Where did that accent come from? Exactly. This is
watching
Wretched
game shows
Radio.
again.
Mike Adams, professor, University of Wilmington in North Carolina, in a debate with a man who claims to be a Christian who is a pro-abortion doctor. In other words, he commits abortions, which I think is a lot better, more accurate word than performs abortions. Having a debate, Summit Ministries put this together, and I think Mike Adams does such a super fine job of laying out the pro-life case. Now, please note, this particular debate is not a theological debate. Now, I believe that you need theology to support your logic and reason. Without objective truth, there really can be no logic and reason, merely preferences. Nevertheless, Mike doing a bang-up job of applying the SLED argument against Dr. Willie Parker. You remember SLED? The big question in the life debate is, what is it? And people will respond and say, it's really small. Okay, so we're 2-year-olds. We don't kill them. Level of development, it's not as developed. Okay, my teenager isn't as developed as I am as a grown adult, but I'm not going to kill my teenager. Environment, it's inside of the mother's womb. Since when does zip code or location determine whether or not somebody's human? And then finally, degree of dependency. Well, it requires mom to stay alive, just like a lot of people require drugs to stay alive, but we don't kill them. That is your SLED. Jump on it and ride it to the finish line if you're ever in a discussion about abortion.
Dr. Willie Parker says that he will not do race-selective abortions. He also says that he will not do sex-selective abortions. So he has declared that it is wrong to engage in racial discrimination and gender discrimination. I absolutely agree. But do you see what the problem is here? He has traded away 2 forms of discrimination, race and gender, in exchange for 3: size, level of development, and degree of dependency. I, for the record, am opposed to all 5 of those forms of discrimination.
Excellent stuff. That sometimes you can actually agree with your opponent on a particular line or statement. You don't give ground. You're demonstrating I'm reasonable, and in this case, you can put it in your hand like a club and just bang on him for it.
I have in my materials here an article by Dr. Mary Calderon, who was the International Medical Director of Planned Parenthood. She said that the number of women dying as a result of unsafe abortions had gone all the way down to approximately, I think it was 256 in the year 1957. Now, the problem is that once Roe versus Wade then came along and became legal, the number of abortions being performed every year went up by several 100,000. So it raises a fundamental question. Does it make sense to kill several 100,000 innocent human beings to save several hundred?
That's a powerful statistic. I think the number, that was a Planned Parenthood number from 1957. I do believe in 72, the year before Roe v. Wade was passed, the number of women who died, don't take this one to the bank, but it was well under 100. And yet that is the argument that gets used. All these women are going to die in back alley abortions if it's not legal. No, well, they won't die if they don't perform something that's illegal. Furthermore, do we really want to sacrifice 60 million babies for that?
Yes, he did mention the fact that there have been 11 abortion providers who have been killed in about the last half century, but there have been 60 million innocent human beings aborted. That's something he didn't mention. And they matter. They absolutely matter because they're valuable, because of their basic human nature.
Yep. The killing of abortion doctors, wrong, sinful, wicked, wrong, denounced by everybody. But why? Why would we denounce that? The Christian answer is because it's a human being, and you do not have the authority to take anybody's life. That's the government's job, not yours. You can't go indiscriminately murder people because you don't like them or you don't like what they do. I can say that as a Christian. The secularists can't say that. It's merely a preference that you don't murder abortion doctors. It's not a preference when God says, thou shalt not murder.
Roe versus Wade was just simply absolutely wrong, and it was wrong in two ways. First of all, it said that there was no scientific consensus in 1973 on the issue of when life begins. The fact of the matter is that there was scientific consensus. Now, what's crazy about Roe versus Wade is it said that a woman's reproductive right to choose was inextricably bound to the question of when life begins. It then said, we don't know when life begins. So guess what? That means you don't know the parameters of a woman's right to choose. That decision was a scientific and logical disaster, and that is why it must be absolutely overturned.
You hope that it will be, but then it's going to become a states' rights issue.
As I reach to the back of my hand and I pluck the back of my hand, there are hundreds, and if I keep doing it, thousands of live skin cells that are plunging to their deaths. There is no one in this room who thinks that I just committed mass murder, because we all understand the difference between a part of a human being and a distinct living and whole human being. So when Dr. Parker talks about the sperm and the egg being alive before conception, that's true, but they die off in the process of coming up with a new, distinct, living and whole human embryo. This debate is not about how parts of human beings die naturally. It's about intentionally killing complete human beings, distinct, living, and whole human beings.
Yep. Grateful. Mike Adams doing an excellent job. I'm hearing Life is Best, our pro-life resource, all over this presentation.
Dr. Parker says you cannot murder a fetus, you can only murder a person. That's a legalistic argument. But if you want to come up with an example in this country of something that was legal but immoral, think about the 1927 case of Buck versus Bell, in which the state of Virginia was forcing women to be sterilized simply because they were mentally deficient. And in affirming that law in the state of Virginia, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes said this: 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. I want you to think about that for just a second. And that came back to bite us as that phrase was used against us in the Nuremberg trials a few years later. There is a distinction between the legal and the moral.
Yeah, it came back to haunt because eugenics in Germany and eugenics in the United States is still eugenics.
Dr. Parker suggests that this is about preferences. He has stated that choice should be the default position. We should simply trust the woman, and choice should be the default position. In other words, he is saying abortion is just a preference. You have seen this idea expressed before when you see bumper stickers that say, "Don't like an abortion, don't have one." Imagine some fool driving down Market Street with a bumper sticker that said, "Don't like slavery, don't own one."
Boom.
Think about how obscene that would be, because it confuses a truth claim with a preference.
Bing. Mike Adams, I can't recall which lesson this was in Life is Best, but we deal with the arguments about a woman and her body and her right to choose. Mike Adams must have been studying that one pretty carefully.
Dr. Parker talks about personhood and asks the question as to when a woman loses her personhood. At what point does that happen? Here he is actually trying to set up a situation involving competing rights between the woman and between the unborn. He's done this in the past, saying that a fetus cannot be more important than the woman who is carrying it. That is absolutely correct. They have equal rights, and that includes the right to life. But you cannot pit the right to life against the right to liberty or against the pursuit of happiness. Why? Because there is no moral right to intentionally kill an innocent human being, even if it makes you freer, even if it makes you happier. Because if we did that, that would negate all rights for everyone, including the right to life. itself.
And one closing comment from Mike.
We're just opposed to abortion, but we're not necessarily comprehensively pro-life. Let me just say what an arrogant thing that is to say. Just because we are opposed to the intentional killing of innocent human beings does not mean that we are responsible for curing all of society's ills. But here's what's important. We actually are doing things for women who are facing difficult situations. And the pro-life movement has more crisis pregnancy centers than there are abortion clinics in this country.
Mike Adams reminding us Christians are pro-life from beginning to end and in between. Once again, a shout out. Please, if you can, support preborn.org/wretched. They're fighting this good fight in the heart of the battle in New York City. Well done, Professor Adams. Until tomorrow, go serve your king.